Good evening to those who have just joined us. You are watching Prime here on ANC7 with myself, Stefanie Jansen van Vuren. Now, top story, united we stand and divided we fall. The new leader of ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, quoted the losing candidate, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, to emphasize on the importance of unity. Interestingly, the pitch for unity was made on KZN grounds, with Senzo Mchunu, Zikle Zigalala and Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini in attendance. Noluthando Nkosi reports.
Unity has been on display throughout the ANC's newly elected leadership's visit to KwaZulu-Natal. Emerging from a bruising and divisive contest, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa preached unity.
We've come to report that we held a very, very successful conference. The ANC is still here, and the ANC is still alive. And the ANC has elected a unified leadership.
One of the most divided provinces before and after the elective conference, the significance of choosing KwaZulu-Natal to start the unifying bid was not lost on observers.
It was a real joy to see our comrades to shaking hands, sitting side by side and agreeing, yes, Ugoti, they are going to forge unity.
The two-day sojourn is part of a number of pre-January 8 statement events, including paying homage to former ANC presidents. As Cyril Ramaphosa hailed his predecessors, he also laid down the blueprint for the path ahead.
The contest that we had is over. The contest that we had over leadership is over. And in fact, the winner of this contest is the African National Congress.
As the ANC gears to celebrate its 106th birthday, taking everyone along will be its new leader's biggest challenge. Noluthando Nkosi for ANN7.
Joining me in studio to discuss the story further is Oliver Dixon, a socio-political analyst, and also Jackie Shandu, political analyst, joining me in studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making your time away for us and coming to studio. Let's start off, let's go to you, Jackie, first. Let's start off with the ANC leadership is now in KZN. Usually at this time, they will be in the Eastern Cape because of the weekend activities that's going to take place there. So just your comments on that. Why do you think they've headed to KZN this time?
Good evening to you and good evening to the viewers of NN7. I think it's quite a smart move. It's quite symbolic, given the outcomes of the elective conference at Nasrec, pertaining to KwaZulu-Natal for the first time since the dawn of democracy. At least KwaZulu-Natal does not have a representative in the top 6 officials of the African National Congress. So I think that the ANC felt that they had to go back and sort of recommit themselves to say that KZN still matters to the ANC. Of course, we know the political history of KZN itself, both in terms of the transition to democracy, the political violence, the standoff between the African National Congress and Inkatha Freedom Party. We're also aware that at the advent of democracy, KZN is one of those provinces that continued to be led by the Inkatha Freedom Party. So the ANC had to fight a serious political warfare there to convince the electorate of KZN that indeed they were going to lead it more effectively, more efficiently than the IFP. And over time they did win it over. What we've also seen, Stefanie, is that in the last local government election, 2016, we've seen the reinvention, sort of the revival of the IFP, winning a number of municipalities where the ANC had anticipated landslide victories as had been the norm. So the ANC finds itself in a position where seemingly the IFP is on this revival mode. We also saw the DA also pushing numbers up in the last election. So it raised a lot of questions to say, we also understand the ethnic dimension in terms of electoral fortunes in this country. We do know that the ANC shot up in KZN after the emergence of Jacob Zuma from KZN as the president of the ANC. So now that he's out, and with him out, KZN does not have a representative in the top 6. We still wait to see how that's going to shift the voter sentiment to say, okay, well, we may have supported the ANC and actually voted for it whilst Jacob Zuma was in power, but with him out now and no one representing KZN, will it mean that some people may actually shop for a new political home, most likely in the IFP and the DA? I think these are all the considerations that the ANC top 6, the National Executive, have made to say, look, let us go and reassure our constituency, a very important political constituency in KZN, that indeed ANC is still a party of KwaZulu-Natal, and that the fact that there is no representative of KwaZulu-Natal in the top 6 does not necessarily mean that the ANC no longer has affections for the people of KZN.
Well, let's just go across to the phone line now. We are also joined by Umdiseni Ntuli, KZN ANC spokesperson. Thank you so much, for joining us here on ANN7. Let's just get your inputs into regards. You can give us the full story. Why did the ANC decide to go to KZN at this time and not to the Eastern Cape traditionally as they would have done?
Well, thank you very much. Good evening to you and the rest of the colleagues who are participating in the discussion. Compliments to you and the viewers at home. First and foremost, you would know that KwaZulu-Natal is one of the biggest provinces of the African National Congress, both in terms of the ANC membership as well as in terms of the ANC electoral support. But beside that, it is the home of probably the majority of the founding fathers of the African National Congress. The founding president is from our home, and the fourth president, President Gumede, is from KZN. So it was in our understanding, as we were briefed by the national leadership, they wanted to pay homage to these heroes of our revolution. They wanted to come and account to them about the national conference that has taken place, its outcome, and how the leadership elected at the national conference is intending to take forward the decisions of the national conference, but to impact positively in the lives of our people, majority of whom are poor and dependent on the success of the national democratic revolution led by the ANC. We believe that was the purpose of the visit to the province, as was outlined by President Ramaphosa. And of course, we welcome that with both hands, because we are Democrats. We've gone to a national conference understanding that a conclusion of the conference may go either way. And therefore, we were conditioned in our minds that whatever happened at the national conference, we must have the capacity and the courage to be among those who are going to accept the processes and move on with the work of ensuring that we consolidate the African National Congress to lead our people to a better life for all.
Mdumiseni, please stay on the phone line for me. I'm also joined by Oliver Dixon here in studio. Let's come across to you, Oliver. As they are saying, the ANC said that it is the home ground of the ANC, KZN, and that is why they are going there to pay homage to those previous leaders coming from KZN. But do you agree with that? Do you think that there might be something underlining it? We do know that KZN did suffer, but at the ANC National Elective Conference this year, where not one of the people coming from KZN was actually elected into the top 6.
Yeah, no, certainly. The KZN is at this moment, I would say, the most volatile, politically the most volatile province in South Africa. Jack is right. The numbers are not playing in favor of the ANC at the moment in KZN. I think the biggest upset that we've seen in KZN, which is symbolically indicative of that volatility, is the fact that Nkandla went to the IFP as a region, which is something you wouldn't have expected to happen in KZN, particularly rural KZN, where the ANC tried building most of its support base with Jacob Zuma coming into power, and the campaigning of the 2013 elections, 2014 elections was strongly about building support back into KZN in the national government election. So there is the fear that a vacuum is created given the fact that KZN has very little representation in the top 6. However, I'm not sure whether that vacuum at this stage gives much room for the IFP to grow, in particular in that province, because I think the IFP is a party that's losing quite a lot of its stronghold. Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who has been symbolically the party himself, has indicated retirement. And he sees no prospects of himself contesting in the next election as the leader of the party there. So the ANC has a lot of opportunity to not allow for that vacuum to exist. But I think if we're going to talk about unity, it needs to be about crossing the floor. And if this top 6 says they're as united as they are, they would start in provinces like Mpumalanga, provinces like KZN, and provinces like the Free State, which sang a different tune, if you look at the run-up into the elective conference. And I think, importantly, that's where they need to start. I mean, just as a cost-value benefit, as a cost-benefit value evaluation, they didn't need to start in the Eastern Cape because they're going to go there anyway. I think there's a lot for the ANC to actually go back and celebrate in KZN. Under Jacob Zuma's administration, the N3 Gateway project has been incredibly successful in bolstering local business in that region, in terms of attracting, in terms of generating revenue through tourist attractions, importantly, as well as allowing for a sort of special economic zone to exist, so to speak, in that area. And that was entirely under directorship of Jacob Zuma. If you would remember, that entire economy existing there was confident enough that they actually wanted to bid for the Commonwealth Games. And it was, again, largely going to be under the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa in that instance. Different issue, but quite happy that didn't happen. But I think, importantly, there's a lot for them to actually go celebrate. A lot of jobs was created on the N3 Gateway project, and I think a lot more can be explored, specifically looking at land issues going into the sugarcane fields, which are predominantly white-owned in KZN. If you look at companies like Ilovo, for instance, and companies making and Hewlett Packard in that region, there's a lot to talk about the land of displaced black Africans in that instance, and I think this provides for that opportunity. Cyril Ramaphosa hasn't abandoned the tune of radical economic transformation. He spoke quite strongly about it yesterday and today, and I think if that conversation is going to continue, it needs to begin there.
Mdumiseni, let's go to you again. Is there any fear inside the ANC that they are losing support in KZN and that this may influence the 2019 elections?
Well, no, I don't think so. Well, as a provincial executive committee, we don't think that the outcome of the national conference can impact on the electoral support of the ANC. And I'm quite certain that the same sentiment is shared by our national leadership. We remain an important province, as I said, because of our numbers, because of our potential, the population we have in KZN. I think all of us would always be interested to ensure that KZN remains solid, remains, like all other provinces led by the African National Congress, ready to produce the numbers that it has the capacity to produce. But I don't think that really to be a stretch of imagination for anybody to say this outcome, because it has no one from the top 6 who comes from KwaZulu-Natal, therefore is a fatal blow for the support of the ANC. I don't think so. I think that we've elected leadership. I think that that leadership, working together with the structures of the ANC from the level of the branch, the regional executive committees, as well as the PEC in the province, will ensure that we either maintain the same support or we gain more. Our desire as the current leadership of the ANC is to grow the support base of the ANC in 2019. We think that it's possible, it's feasible. We don't think that the 54th National Conference has had anything that would impact negatively on that agenda.
Well, thank you so much. Please do stay on the phone line. Jackie, let's come across to you again. Mdumiseni just said that they don't believe that the National Elective Conference will have any outcome or any impact rather on the 2019 elections. How do you think that comment is actually viable? Do you think that it is true that the National Elective Conference will have no impact on the people voting on the ground?
Look, I can tell you with absolute certainty that the ANC was caught with great surprise at the outcome of the previous local government elections in KwaZulu-Natal, including a mere 56% majority in eThekwini Metro. And if you look at the previous results of the local government elections, the ANC had always won quite comfortably, you see. So but I mean, it's understandable for the party man to speak and take the posture that he does to inspire confidence to say, look, you know, we're comfortable and we're going to increase our numbers. But I'm saying, empirically speaking, the ANC did drop the ball. They did get their votes reduced across the regions, KZN, including losing, by the way, a number of municipalities to IFP or these coalition arrangements. So we must try also beyond ideology or advocating or propaganda to be guided by empirical and scientific evidence. And it does raise a lot of concerns. I mean, I've just come back from KZN today myself. And fortunately, even though it was a short space of time, I was able to move around and try to get the feeling in terms of how people process what transpired in Nasrec. And if you would ask me, there is a concern that how does it happen that this time around, for such a huge province, as Mpemba correctly points out, that in terms of numbers, in terms of the history of the ANC itself, from Seme to Dube to Josako Mede to Anton Lembede to Lutuli, it's a whole host of huge ANC figures that come from KZN. So it remains to be seen. Look, I think the most important thing between now and the general election next year is for the ANC to be as aggressive as it possibly can in terms of implementing the policy positions that were adopted in Nasrec, starting immediately with fee-free education. We know that institutions of higher learning, some have already opened, some are allowing walk-ins, others are not. We would want to see the vast majority of students coming from poor background within that income bracket being accommodated smoothly in institutions of higher learning. Immediately thereafter, as my colleague has already pointed out, you look at a province like KZN, the land issue in particular goes a long way. You have the oligarchs of Hewlett owning pretty much of eThekwini and surrounding areas. Very little has been done. It has stalled the land reform process. We've heard from small cane-growing farmers, the Sugar Act, the apartheid colonial white supremacist racist Sugar Act of 1978 that the ANC government has had no courage, you know, to repeal and create a new legal framework, you know, for the sugar industry. We've heard from SAFDA, the Cane Growers Association of South Africa, refusing, for instance, to actually recognize them. I think these are really already existing practical issues that the ANC can really move into in terms of also satisfying the policy positions that they themselves have adopted. But the ANC, in the dawn of democracy, has a reputation of sometimes adopting really good policies, but that's where it ends. In the same way that they resolved in 2007 to abolish labor brokers. And it's 2018 and labor brokers do exist. It was only a year ago or so where they spoke to some regulation, but I was there in Nasrec and I heard Stumo Dlamini, president of COSATU, putting it so well that regulation does not work. Because what do companies now do? They know that if you are hired for more than 90 days, they have to hire you permanently, so they just give you a 90-day fixed-term contract. So it's a recurring. Capital always find ways of circumventing these kinds of things. The ANC must be very bold, very courageous, very decisive. Its electoral fortunes next year hinge largely on what it does with quite progressive policies that it has adopted in Nasrec over the past couple of weeks.
Oliver, let's go across to you again. Do you think that the ANC actually implementing the policies that they have had with the previous conferences and so on, do you think that that will actually help them gain support in KZN? Do you think that in 2019 we can see a rise of support for the ANC?
Yeah, no, certainly. You're definitely going to see that. Just to put that into the bigger picture of context, in the 2019 general national election, majority of the electorate, that's to say about at least 85% of the electorate, will fall under the age of 35. KZN has one of the youngest populations in the country, second to the Eastern Cape, according to Stats South Africa. And that's the province that's going to have an incredibly young electorate. That's also the province where fees must fall was a thing before it became fashionable, where students from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and students from Durban University of Technology were shamboked and imprisoned long before it became national headlines. And those are the students who will celebrate the victory of free higher education. Those are the students who will not have to go back to the onslaught of police officers in those provinces. And those are the people going back to their homesteads and preaching free education as a result of the ANC. That's to say, if it's successfully implemented. I have no doubt that our government has the capacity to successfully implement the rollout of free education. So that's one example of an ANC policy that can appeal to the younger voters that will be walking in 2019, that will win back that support for the ANC. Jackie gave you fantastic analysis about why the land question, which was also a resolution at the previous conference at NASDAQ, why the land resolution is something that will resonate with the hearts and minds of the people of KwaZulu-Natal. And that's an important conversation. The ANC now needs to move away from just lip service and actual implementation. They need to consult the people on the ground. And when I mean the people on the ground, I mean not just speak to, the king and powerful municipal managers and people who serve as mayors and stuff like that, but actually go to the hearts and minds of people, specifically where the DA and the IFP has won a lot of ground, and speak about land and speak about what it means for the people of KZN to actually be participants in the harbour economy, in the harbour port economy that exists in KwaZulu-Natal, to be participants in the sugarcane economy, and importantly in the tourism economy that exists in KwaZulu-Natal.
If I may just add, Oliver, very briefly, the ANC has also shamefully lacked the courage to deal with the Indian question in KwaZulu-Natal. There is an over-representation of Indians, both in terms of black economic empowerment and affirmative action measures. Whereas Indians constitute roughly 3% of the national population, or it's slightly greater if you confine it to KZN. But if you go and you look at the BEE sort of reports in terms of how the various groups that are supposed to benefit from both BEE and AA, it's a complete mess, and it even begs the questions because there is also a perception that there are some leaders of the ANC in KZN, in eThekwini in particular, who have unethical relations with a group of sort of Indian merchants and business people, and so there's some bribery going on so as to not really deal with this issue that a lot of people have raised. It's not a new discussion. There have been songs composed about these things, a whole range of issues raised. It's about time, and it's not about targeting a particular group. It's about rectification. It's about moving towards achieving social equality, and it shouldn't be taboo to say in KZN as a region there is this trend because of how apartheid planning of the hierarchy of oppression, that these ones could get more benefits, they could own shops in Grey Street, they could do all sorts of things, they could buy land, and when you're about to redress all of that, you cannot then do it in a manner that suggests that Africans, Indians and Coloureds were oppressed to the same extent. These are the things that the ANC need to get really sober, practical and bold about. Otherwise, the opposition is going to capitalize on it, just as we had the EFF in Durban last year celebrating its 40th anniversary, raising the Indian question quite sharply.
That is, of course, a very interesting debate that we can also have. Oliver, I just want to come across to you for your closing remarks. Do you think that President of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, is actually going to KZN will have an effect? Is it strong enough for him talking about unity to actually rally the troops behind the ANC and KZN?
It will only be meaningful if Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as his top six, remain consistent, because consistency is key here. Here's the trick in all of this, right? The KZN support bolstered because of Jacob Zuma. right? Jacob Zuma is still a well-beloved cadre in KZN. If the talks about Jacob Zuma's removal before 2019 is one that that gains traction and one that people fear will be a real thing, then Cyril Ramaphosa's efforts in KZN today will not be successful and will have been meaningless if you reflect on them months from now.
Well, thank you so much to my guest in studio and also on the telephone line, Oliver Dixon joining me in studio as a socio-political analyst, also Jackie Shandu, political analyst, and also on the phone line, Dumiseni Ntuli, KZN ANC spokesperson. Well, that's all we have for now. We'll take a short break and a look at your weather forecast.